Hello, this is Rob Mazak, and I'd like to take a moment to welcome you to the Life by Mazak podcast channel. Here on this channel, anything is possible. Any subject will and usually is discussed, and there's no telling how this message will unfold as we work through an idea, through an experience, or through a thought. These subjects come from the vast amount of information and experience through spirit, through life lessons, and from working with a lot of other people. Scripts are never used on this channel, and the message simply unfolds as the subject is discussed. Follow along and see where it leads us, or more specifically, where it leads me. These podcasts are produced in the hopes of helping others to benefit, to grow, and to excel in their own human experience. At Life by Mazak, we work towards helping you achieve wellness for your mind, your body, and your soul using many specialized services. Services that include psychic medium and tarot readings, quantum healing hypnosis, past life regression, intuitive Reiki healing, life coaching, and many other services. If you enjoyed this podcast, please click the like button and share this with others. Our goal is to reach as many people as we can with the knowledge that is shared on this podcast channel. Hello, everyone. I wanted to spend a little time tonight talking about some things that I am not here to try to convince anybody about or to state that any of these things are true, because I don't know that for sure. And I'm never going to point fingers or talk about programs or things that are going on that I don't have solid evidence on. However, I do have a lot of experiences of my own, some memories that seem to be there, and a lot of interesting conversations with many clients and colleagues and friends that talk about these things that really bring to light a lot of ideas and possibilities that there may be a lot of mind control type operations in our world today. Like I said, I'm not here to prove that or point fingers or say that's true. But there's a lot of interesting circumstantial evidence that seems to be out there, which means that a lot of things, a lot of different breadcrumbs, a lot of different pieces of the puzzle begin to kind of form a picture, which might suggest that there could be something going on. But like I said, I'm not here to convince anybody. The main thing I want to convince everybody in the audience about is to really be mindful about who you allow to control your perception and your truth. It is very, very easy to control the perceptions of human beings. It is absolutely probably one of the easiest things there is to do. And it happens all the time. And it happens very covertly right now because through music that's put out, through television, through movies, through Netflix, through all these shows, social media stuff that's out, there's a lot of, in my opinion, purposeful things that are being integrated into our perceptions for some reason. I'm not sure exactly what that reason is. We can all speculate. I guess it doesn't matter. However, it does seem like that there's some type of agenda out there to control the mass thinking of the human population. And I get it. I guess it makes sense if you have billions of people that you're trying to maintain order with. You certainly don't want a lot of people going off the rails and thinking different than the agenda or the norm, because then it really takes away from societal order. And I get that. And I'm not saying that's what's happening, but that could be one of the possibilities. However, when you put your perception and your control into the hands of somebody else based on a religion, based on an ideal, based on whatever, you might find yourself completely unhinged and at the beck and call of that person or that organization. I say that because I have some personal experience with that, which we can circle back on. I'm back on this idea of these type of programs because, as I have said many times, if you get on to social media, I was doing it for business reasons, advertising or whatever. But for some reason, my feeds, the algorithm seems to be taking me routinely and a lot tonight to the Jim Jones cult event that happened in Guyana in 1978. Now that seems like a long time ago, and I guess it is. I was, I was 18 then, and that story is quite horrendous in a lot of ways. And so these people, and there's a lot of theories, a lot of ideas. I will post a video in the comments for you guys to look at, and a story that I wrote about my experience and kind of aligning it with Jim Jones. But there's a lot of speculation and a lot of ideas about this particular event. And I don't know when it exactly started and formed. I do know that the ending event, a culmination event, happened in 1978. So the idea was that there was a group of people that were taken into the jungles of Guyana. Not even sure what country Guyana's in. I'm sure somebody out there knows. However, it was in the jungles, and there was this compound that was built or enhanced. And a lot of these people lived in, kind of a communal type environment, a evangelical type of environment, and under the cadre of mostly white people, of course, and Jim Jones was white. And I think from the stories I've read, the majority of the people in the commune that were there, especially at the end, were predominantly of black persuasion. Not all of them, but I think a large part of them were. Some of the videos I watched, it looked like it was kind of very well mixed. But anyway, there's a lot of reports, who knows what to really believe. But the idea towards the end was that they had brainwashed these people, I guess, so much. They all believed that dying would be the best way to get to heaven, to get to the other side, because one of the leaders in the group apparently does some of the things that I do, does past life regressions. And in his experience, as he's talking on some of these tapes I listen to, state some of the same things that I hear all the time and I experience in my own, is that, the other side, quote unquote, in other lives, and when you get into the spiritual realm and you kind of maybe not cross over, but you leave this meat suit, is an extraordinary experience. And I've talked about that many times. And so he was bending their beliefs that other side is where they needed to be, and that living is much harder than dying and going to this wonderful place. And that may be true. We don't know that for sure. However, there was a lot of other things embedded in here. The end of it, I guess, was, or the culmination of the event that happened right after a congressman, I believe, came to Guyana to investigate. Apparently, he was unalived on his way out of the place, never to be seen again. And instead of having any governmental agencies or governmental arms or programs in their business, they decided to kick off what they had been planning for a while, was that everyone was to take a syringe full of some Kool-Aid looking stuff, some punch looking stuff that eventually caused convulsions, and they died in 4 to 5 minutes, somewhere in there. They started with the children. Go figure, right? And a lot of them apparently voluntarily stepped up and went through the process, and others were forced. In some of the reports in the video that I'm going to put down at the bottom and in the story I have, says quite otherwise, that, many three-letter agencies were involved and a lot of special operations people, and this was a really large experiment. The MK Ultra type arena. I don't know if MK Ultra still exists. Apparently, it's pretty well documented that it did happen. And, that's kind of those things that most people would imagine would happen to people like it did with Jason Bourne. If you've watched those movies where programming happens and people do a lot of things that they don't realize they're doing, they're just conditioned and programmed to do them based on keywords or events or memories or directives or whatever. This event was really horrible. Apparently there was mixed reports, but I think there was like 1,200 people that perished in this. And in some of the reports, they said that a lot of them may have been ingested the poison, yes. And there is a lot of the drug that they use for programming and in things that are meant to do like MK Ultra type stuff. I forget the name of the drug, but that they had enough there for lots and lots more people than that were actually there. The reports actually brought out some other things, that many people that escaped into the jungle were rounded up and shot or strangled and then, involuntarily injected with some poison in places on their body that they couldn't possibly do to themselves. Who knows what the real story is? But I think the basis of my talk tonight is that these people managed to get themselves involved in an idea and a program that seemed on the surface just absolutely wonderful. Communal living, some people worked, some people watched kids, some people cooked. Good of all for whatever you do. Everybody is contributing to the whole, and nobody's thinking about themselves, apparently. Maybe the leadership is, but the group is convinced that the communal living, contributing to the whole, is the way to do things. In theory, that is a really good idea. And the problem, though, is that when you are a leader or part of the leadership in an organization like this, knowing how easy it is to actually convince and program people to believe whatever it is that you want them to believe, it does kind of go to your head, and it gets out of hand. Whether that's just the way humans are built or people do it maliciously, there's a lot of reasons behind that. But the thing is that those kind of things tend to go bad. And back to my personal experience. And so when I was a child, I was on my way out of my cult experience in 1978. In 18, I was actually able to get out of what I was raised in. And it was the same type of thing, although in a inner city environment. Many households controlled by a small group of leaders. In the city where many of the leadership of Guyana lived and interacted with and visited a lot, go figure. It was built on the same premise, with evangelicals speaking in tongues, communal living. We literally had people that would watch the children, people that would go in town to work, people that would cook, people that would clean. Everybody had their role and their jobs, and it was all to contribute to the whole of everything. As a kid, it seemed really kind of cool. I mean, I got to meet a lot of interesting people, got to learn a lot of different jobs and trades and languages and cultures and races. And I mean, it really made me a well-rounded person in some ways. However, with those type of things, just probably like it did happen in Guyana, the control went the wrong direction. And there was such tight controls that people that were going after basic needs that were not allowed to do those things found other ways to do that. And I say that because when you restrict men and women, especially from dating and connecting with their natural needs, okay, let's just say it, the need for sex and connection and romance and those kind of things, and you literally put so many boundaries on that. Don't give people permission to date. Don't give people permission to marry. You don't allow those things. Oh, especially when it comes to men, they will seem to find a way to get what they need. And guess who becomes the easiest prey? The children, right? There's a lot of experiences, especially in my own family and many of the kids that I knew at the time that were being used and abused in the wrong way because of simple things like that. My family struggled to get out of that environment. And although you could walk away from that one that I was in, when they have everything you own, you don't own anything. You don't have a car. You don't necessarily have a job if you're not the one that's working. And the house that my father bought was really managed by the church and probably paid for by the church after he bought it. I don't know. I was too young to know that. But the thing is that once they have everything you own, and not just everything you own, but when they own your mind and they can control you through all kinds of ways, walking away is not as easy as it sounds. Because yes, literally walking away, great. No job, no car. How are you going to take care of your kids, your family? What are you going to do for a place to live? I mean, it's just almost impossible to walk away. Somehow my father managed to wrangle that away from that particular organization, and we got back on our own. It was hard, and a lot of things went downhill after that, of course, yes. But so there was a lot of interesting correlation between my organization and the Jim Jones Guyana organization. And when I did my research for this story, I discovered that many of the leaders involved in the Guyana and Jonestown group were also leaders involved in the group I was involved in. And that was really shocking because I had no idea. I never put two and two together. It was probably about 5 years ago when I made that story. And I did that on the request of a family member. And I didn't really want to make a whole book on it because somebody did write about it in great detail, and it's crazy. There's a whole chapter on my family in this book of the things that we went through. Because my father and my mother were very much involved in the leadership side of it and all of that too. And so that's another part of that. If you become part of the leadership, even if you begin to realize what's happening and that they're seducing people into doing things that are not necessarily what they believe in or want to do, and you want out, it's like being in a gang. I mean, you could want out all you want, but that's not the easiest thing to do. I understand. I've never been in a gang, but this is what I hear. These kind of things are rampant across our planet, our world. I mean, there's been story after story after story of people that have convinced others that committing suicide is the way that they're going to connect with the spaceship, the mothership that's going to take them away. There was the David Koresh compound in Waco that a lot of people perished because, once again, the government wanted to be involved because there was a lot of misdoings and wrong things going on. And just like Guyana, many people perished. Fortunately, in my organization, it eventually kind of fizzled out. It took a lot of years. It did become a very nationwide, worldwide thing. And it was all over the place. I mean, there was places in Scotland, England, and Colorado, a lot of different states, different countries. I managed to spend my last year and a half or so in the Colorado compound, which was really a compound. It is now a really high level housing development. It was like 65 acres of prime land and cabins and and places where everybody ate together. I mean, all of our meals were eaten together. You're prepared by certain groups of people, and so we literally lived in a compound, and we got made fun of at school a lot, because we lived in that crazy place, and we thought, especially as kids, we thought, well, it's not a bad place. I mean, it's pretty cool, it seems. And if bad things happen to me, I don't really recall them, and I've worked with my spirit guides in the past, and even recently to find out for sure if some of the things that may have happened are really supposed to come to light and I'm supposed to know them. And I've been told many times that it really doesn't matter and I don't need to know that. It's not going to serve my purpose. I guess in my mind, in my memories, I don't necessarily have bad things to recall. And so for me, it seemed like a really cool experience because of all the things I mentioned earlier. I also had the opportunity, I guess opportunity is a good way to put that, to live in one of the households that the couple was very engaged in correcting and growing young men into what they should be. And at first, it was horribly painful. It's like going to boot camp. And it was like boot camp for 3 years, basically. But, it taught me such work ethic and such, I guess work ethic is probably the best thing, and how to be a man and how to be productive and how to go and do things and strive to be my best at it and not accept D's and F's in school and shoot for the moon and shoot for the stars. And so for me, it really set the tone for me. Now, I can't say that that was the experience that my siblings got because they did not. And so many of them did not fare all that well in some cases. Some are still struggling with those memories and some of the things that happened to them back then. You got to remember that when you're young and things like that happen to you, it really gets hardwired in your subconscious. And so then it becomes kind of like a pattern for your life. And I've talked at length about those things in other of my podcasts. But the thing is, these programs like MK Ultra or whatever names there are out there for these types of things, they want to get people involved when they're young because between 0 and 7, you just are wide open parachute way of learning. How you survive in this world? What are the rules of engagement? What is it to be a human and survive and get through this life? And so that's where you learn. And the thing is that they use the gifted and talent education programs, I'm understanding. I just watched a video on that. I've talked to many colleagues of mine and clients that have memories beginning to surface about those things. When they see some of these videos and they hear things and they talk to other people, those memories begin to come back. They get triggered. They realize that they were at the hands of people that were trying to program or at least identify if they had gifts. And for what purpose, I don't know. Why would you want to know if a child is psychic, capable of mediumship or telepathy? I'm not sure why you would need to know that. Maybe they were selecting certain people to do certain things. I don't know. There's a lot of, once again, circumstantial evidence out there. And the funny thing is that when I was watching that video last night and the night before about that program, it talked about some of the things that they did routinely, certain types of memory cards. I forget what it's called. A certain type of drink that they wanted you to ingest when they were done with whatever testing that they were doing so that you would forget that those things happen. And as soon as they talked about those things, it really struck a nerve within me like, that sounds very familiar. According to many things I've researched and looked at, if you went to school at all, especially in the United States, you have been tested and that you have been looked at. And it seems like they really had a lot of their attention on those that were quote unquote mentally retarded or special needs type children. in my opinion, that makes sense because they are connected to a different level of reality than us normal people are, right? Quote unquote normal people. That is kind of the information that I think agencies would love to be able to tap into because they did have remote viewing programs in the past when we didn't have the technology that we have now. So I don't know if remote viewing is really a big thing. But there are a lot of things out there. There's a lot of experiences that you have to be careful with getting yourself involved with. Once again, saying that anything these things are true. These are things that once again I've experienced on my own, experiences that I've heard from others, things that I research and look at. Doesn't mean they're true. But I don't think anybody would argue that there isn't something going on out there that's looking to program humans. And it makes sense in a lot of ways. I don't say I agree with it, but it does make sense if you're a quote unquote leader of this planet that you would want to control people. That makes sense in that respect. But that really seems to take away free will, doesn't it? Seems to take away what we believe is free will anyway. And it takes away our ability to think for ourselves, and we become programmed, and we become so hardwired programmed that it's hard to change and it's hard to do anything different. And many of us don't even realize it's happened. The real secret, I think, is to really dig into yourself. If you look at your life and you have a lot of patterns that you don't understand, things that happen in your life over and over again, things you can't seem to manifest or create or do. You have the same type of relationship showing up in your life, the same type of bad luck, same types of things repeating over and over and over again. It's likely that you have been programmed at some point, either on purpose or just life happened, and you are programmed in your subconscious mind to believe that those things are normal. And so our subconscious, in short, is in charge. Whatever it believes is hardwired as your truth and your perception, it is going to bring into your life everything that supports that perception and those truths. And so that is why many of the same things happen over and over and over in our lives. And a lot of us just can't understand it. The challenge would be then to reprogram that. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I've talked about that on a lot of podcasts. But the thing is doing it on purpose, delving into yourself, identifying the patterns first, looking at who you are and why you are. Then you can come up with an idea or a plan or seek out assistance to figure out how to reprogram that. You can do that through hypnosis and through many other simple ideas. Those kind of things I do and other people do. Sometimes we can't do things all alone or all by ourselves, but the things we have to do all by ourselves is the work. We have to do the work. I could provide all the tools in the world, and I can't do it for you, though. You have to do the work. You have to figure out what it is you want, where the problems are, what's the sticking points, what's the programming, and then you got to get out of your own damn way. Let's not allow the world and those out there that mean to control us succeed in that. We should be running our own path, running our own life, having our own experiences of our choosing and not other people's choosing. But not only does that require the work, it also requires you to look at what you're allowing in your environment. Because everything has energy, everything has a signature, everything energetically goes straight to your subconscious without a filter. The music you listen to, the shows you watch, the people you hang out with, the food you eat, everything affects your subconscious, and it is where the programs are developed. And so whatever you surround yourself with, subject yourself to, you will become just like them boys are, just like your mother said. If you keep hanging around them boys or them girls, you're going to become just like them, and that is absolutely true. So we have to become a better version of ourselves. We have to become who we want to be, not who the world wants us to be. All right, I will end my soapbox here. Make your way over to my website, lifebymazak.com, lifebymazak.com. Take a look around. Connect with me when you can. I really love working with people because not only do you learn, I learn, everybody learns. There's a lot of things that I do, a lot of things I speak from that I've learned from through working with many clients, working with many colleagues. And so let's all band together. Let's all work together to create a world that should be and not what is trying to be made into. Stay strong and live your life.